Picture this. A battlefield swarming with thousands of warriors. The sky is black with arrows, swords clang against shields, hooves, thunder over churned-up mud. Rain lashes down, soaking men and elves alike, and you can practically smell the smoke and blood in the air. Now think about many modern fantasy battle scenes. They look different. Clean, glossy, computer perfect. Almost like you're watching an expensive video game cutscene instead of real war. Over 20 years ago, Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy redefined what an epic fantasy war could feel like on screen. Gritty, emotional, overwhelming in its scale, and above all, real. And it wasn't because CGI didn't exist. Quite the opposite. Jackson made a deliberate choice to keep Middle-earth grounded in physicality, refusing to let digital effects strip the battles of their humanity. This decision wasn't just technical, it was philosophical. Jackson believed fantasy should feel like history, that Tolkien's world needed dirt under its nails and blood on its swords. In this video, we're taking a deep dive into how Jackson and his team brought Middle-earth's wars to life, why these battles still outshine modern blockbusters 2 decades later, and what today's filmmakers can learn from one of cinema's most monumental achievements. When Jackson began developing The Lord of the Rings, Hollywood was in love with CGI. The late 90s had seen a wave of digitally created armies, digital landscapes, and even fully animated characters leading major battles. The Phantom Menace, 1999, was a milestone for CGI warfare, giving us legions of droids and Gungans that existed entirely inside a computer. The appeal was obvious. CGI armies are faster to assemble, cheaper than paying thousands of extras, and infinitely flexible. Need 20,000 soldiers, 200,000? No problem, just copy and paste. But with all that convenience came a problem many audiences could feel but couldn't always explain. Digital battles lacked weight. Movements were too smooth, blows didn't seem to land with force, the danger never felt real. Jackson knew this would be fatal to The Lord of the Rings. These weren't just fantasy skirmishes, they were the culmination of a world at war, battles where entire civilizations hung in the balance. If the audience didn't feel fear, desperation, and physical danger, the story wouldn't land. So, from day one, Jackson laid down a rule. Middle-earth must feel real, no shortcuts, no soulless simulations. Technology would serve the story, not replace reality. Jackson's genius was treating Tolkien's world as if it had truly existed for thousands of years before cameras arrived. Every weapon, costume, and location needed to tell a story of long-forgotten battles and ancient cultures. This philosophy extended to the way war was portrayed. Real battles are messy, unpredictable, terrifying. People slip in the mud, weapons break, formations collapse in chaos. The stakes are felt in every scream, every desperate clash of steel. CGI armies, especially in the early 2000s, couldn't capture that visceral unpredictability. Jackson understood that war is as much about texture and sensation as it is about numbers. The crunch of boots on wet soil, the clatter of real metal on real armor, the heaving breath of an actor who's been fighting for hours. These sensory details pull the audience in. And to get them, the filmmaking itself had to be physical. One of WETA Workshop's most famous contributions to the trilogy was its Bigatures, colossal, highly detailed miniature sets that could be filmed, like real fortresses and cities. Minas Tirith's miniature stood over 7 meters tall with working gates, individually placed flags, and thousands of tiny windows painstakingly lit. Helm's Deep sprawled across an entire soundstage, every wall weathered, every stone looking like it had stood for centuries. CGI could have built these locations virtually, but digital cities often lack imperfections. Real objects naturally catch light, cast shadows, and have a texture that subconsciously convinces you they exist. Filming these Bigatures with sweeping camera moves made every establishing shot monumental because they were monumental. For Minas Tirith, Jackson could send a camera crane swooping down over 7 stories of stonework, capturing angles that early CGI would have struggled to render believably. Orthanc, Barad-dûr, even the Black Gate, all of them started as handcrafted models, giving Middle-earth a tactile geography no amount of pixels could replicate. Of course, filming tens of thousands of real warriors wasn't possible. This is where WETA's groundbreaking massive software came in. A program that allowed digital soldiers to be more than just animated copies. Each one was programmed with instincts. They could fight, flee, defend, or charge, making every clash feel unique. But here's the difference. CGI never replaced reality. Hundreds of stunt performers and extras formed the heart of every battle. They clashed in front of the cameras, swinging real swords and shields, creating unpredictable chaos. Massive filled the horizon, extended the scale, but it wasn't the main act. When you watch Helm's Deep, the rain-slicked close-ups of sword fights are real people in real mud. The cavalry charge at Pelennor Fields, actual riders on trained horses thundering across real terrain. CGI simply added the illusion of endless armies beyond what the camera could physically capture. WETA produced 48,000 unique pieces of armor and over 10,000 weapons for the trilogy. Every orc's armor was different, every Rohirrim helm uniquely dented or scratched. Extras who appeared on screen for just seconds were fully kitted out in detailed, historically inspired gear. The battles weren't just visually authentic, they were physically grueling. Viggo Mortensen trained with a real steel sword, not a lightweight prop. The fight choreography was relentless, with actors enduring months of stunt training in swordplay, archery, and horseback combat. Helm's Deep was a particular ordeal, filmed over 120 consecutive nights in freezing rain. Hundreds of actors and stunt performers slogged through mud and exhaustion, many sustaining minor injuries. The weariness and desperation on screen weren't performances, they were real. Even the horses bore the weight of realism, charging in carefully planned stunts that carried genuine danger. That's why these battles still hit hard today. You're not watching pixels crash into each other. You're witnessing real people in real conditions, fighting for their lives on camera. Jackson filmed across the wild landscapes of New Zealand, using real hills, fortresses, and valleys to give every battle a tangible sense of geography. The camera could move dynamically, tracking fighters through winding passes, plunging into melees, or soaring above cavalry charges. Practical effects added to the immersion. Real dust clouds rose from horse hooves, real sparks flew from clashing blades, real rain drenched the actors and even the lenses, making every frame feel alive. These conditions transformed performances. Actors weren't staring at tennis balls on sticks or pretending a green screen was an army of orcs. They were surrounded by hundreds of screaming warriors, drenched in real weather, with mud on their armor and genuine fear in their eyes. The environment didn't just make the audience believe, it made the actors believe, giving their performances a raw, instinctive energy no digital set can inspire. Stories from the set only deepen the legend. Viggo Mortensen famously carried his sword everywhere, even offset, to fully inhabit Aragorn. In one scene, he broke 2 toes kicking a helmet, and his agonized scream made it into the final cut. Extras described the Helm's Deep shoot as one of the most exhausting experiences of their lives, with many suffering bruises and hypothermia, but all of them said it made the battle scenes feel terrifyingly real. Stunt coordinator George Marshall Rouge insisted on full contact choreography, meaning every blow had weight, every fall risked real impact. Even the makeup department went to extremes. Thousands of unique prosthetics for orcs, with grime and blood applied by hand to avoid the glossy look of digital gore. These weren't just actors pretending to fight. They were living the chaos of war for weeks on end, and the camera caught every ounce of that reality. 2 decades later, Lord of the Rings remains the gold standard for epic cinematic battles. Modern fantasy films, and even Jackson's own Hobbit trilogy, often lean on CGI armies, digital environments, and green screen sound stages. The result is battles that feel sterile, weightless, detached from reality. LOTR proved something timeless. Audiences connect with reality on a primal level. When mud clings to a boot, when an actor truly strains to lift their sword, when the rain runs down their face as they scream in fear or rage, you're not just watching a story, you're living it alongside them. Practical filmmaking doesn't just look better, it feels better, and it leaves a legacy that digital shortcuts can't touch. Helm's Deep, Pelennor Fields, the Siege of Minas Tirith. These battles endure not because of their scale, but because of their humanity. The battles of Middle-earth endure because they were built, fought, and filmed in the real world, with digital tools used as reinforcements, not as replacements. Peter Jackson understood that technology is a tool, not a solution. Modern filmmakers often chase spectacle, thinking bigger armies and flashier effects will make their battles memorable. But Lord of the Rings shows that what truly makes war epic on screen is human grit. Real mud, real swords, real exhaustion, and fear captured on camera. If there's one lesson for today's directors, it's this. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is strip away the green screens, gather real warriors on a real battlefield, and let chaos, danger, and humanity tell the story. That's how you make fantasy feel legendary. And that's why The Lord of the Rings will forever reign supreme as the greatest cinematic war ever filmed.